Hi. 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 Oh my god, I love cows. Hi. 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 Oh my god, hi. Hi. Hi, Vanilla. Hi. Hi. Oh. Hi. Hello. Hi. 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 They are so friendly. Oh. Hi. Don't eat my hair. There we go. Oh, I love this. Okay, so with all of this milk that we now have, I am going to make a kind of fresh farmer's cheese. This is a great thing to make if you have a milk surplus, especially a high quality milk like this one. So it's just made on the stovetop and we're going to strain it overnight. Ingredients are simple. It's just milk and a little bit of acid to initiate that coagulation. I'm using lemon juice in this case. So it's a really kind of easy, like beginner's cheese that you can make at home. No rennet required or any kind of like cheese making starter. So I'm going to start with my milk. It sounds like a lot of milk, but it ends up making like a manageable amount of fresh cheese. So I'm kind of just going to pour the cream off the top because I really kind of want to start with that amount of fat in here. So I'm going to measure out 8 cups. This to me is a very yellow milk, which is great because that's how I know there's a lot of fat in it. Now I'm going to add my salt. So for 8 cups, I'm using 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt. This is Diamond Crystal. I always say if you use Morton's, it's like saltier by volume, so use half, 3/4 of a teaspoon. This is just going to help season it. It doesn't make a very salty cheese. It's just kind of like mildly seasoning it because I'm going to use this in a sweet application. So I don't want it to be very, very salty. Okay, so my other ingredient is just 1/4 cup of lemon juice. And it's very helpful, even kind of essential, to have an instant read thermometer because we're going to heat this slowly to 190 Fahrenheit. So I just want to sort of stir this occasionally, just in case you're scorching on the bottom, which I know there won't be because I'm using a Dutch oven and I don't really have that problem. Oh, this isn't even on. Hello. So I'm going to put this on kind of medium high and let it come up slowly. And so 190, it's kind of that like scalding temperature where it's just below, like it's not going to come to a boil or a simmer, but you're going to see some steaming and maybe even some like very gentle rippling in places. And we just want to watch it. At that point, cut the heat, add the acid. Basically what happens is the acid curdles the milk and you get these sort of fresh milk curds, and then we're going to strain it. And what you end up with is something similar to ricotta, kind of like a farmer's cheese. It's not quite the same texture as a cottage cheese, but it's sort of a close relative. It's delicious. If you like dairy, like you're going to love it. You can use it for toast. It's great on bruschetta. You can have it in your pasta. You can use it to fill pasta if you're making fresh pasta. There's so many options. You can use it to make like pierogies, which was something I was going to do with it last time, but we just ended up eating it. So this milk, you can see here from the gallon, we got at a local farm. It's just like a 10-minute drive from our house. And if you go there in person, you can buy the milk raw, which is really great. So it's non-homogenized. It has a really high fat content. When you get the gallon, you see the separation of like the cream on top and the milk on the bottom. So I just love using a local product that's super high quality. All right, so let's see where we are. We're barely warm. We're not even bathtub warm. Turn up the heat a little bit. I'm not an expert in this. I've done this before, but I wanted to do a little bit of research to learn a little bit more about the process. Basically, I think it's just a lot of trial and error. Like the kind of milk you're using will give you different results, brand to brand. the different acids and everything. But every time I've done it, I've used lemon juice because of all the flavors. That's kind of like, to me, the most sort of like all purpose. It just kind of goes with everything. All right, let's take a few more minutes. I have a strainer here, like a mesh strainer. You could use a colander. And then I have some cheesecloth that I lined it with. And so this is going to help me strain the cheese because I want to reduce the water content. And how much you strain it is up to you. If you like a softer cheese, you can strain it for like an hour. If you want something firmer, you can let it go overnight. If you want something really firm that you can slice, you can put like a 28-ounce can on top to weight it so you get even more sort of liquid extracted. And then you get something that you can cut. Basically, it's sort of like paneer. So I'm just gonna strain it overnight. So it's gonna go for maybe 12 hours or so. So this is gonna make at least a pint of this kind of fresh cheese. And I do like having it around. I like eating it on bread or toast or that kind of thing. But specifically, I'm gonna use some of it to make a no-bake cheesecake, like sort of basically similar to a no-bake ricotta cheesecake. But rather than ricotta, I'm gonna use the fresh cheese. If you wanted to make the cheesecake and you didn't want to do this, just use ricotta. That's perfectly fine. All right, so we are starting to steam a little bit. I must be getting close. I'm almost there. I'm gonna turn it down. I got 190 somewhere in here. You saw it, right? Okay, we're good. I'm gonna turn it off. So now I'm going to add my lemon juice. Again, this is 4 tablespoons for 8 cups of milk. And basically you're gonna add your acid, whatever you're using. Give it kind of like a decent stir and then let it alone. So instantly you can see actually that it's starting to curdle. I don't know how visible that is. Between the foamy patches that right beneath the surface, you start to see the curds. Oh, I'm gonna set my timer for 15 minutes. I want this to sit because I want like all of the curds to have a chance to kind of form. So 15 minutes, we'll come back and strain it. Okay, 47 seconds left. I feel like we're good. Okay, so the timer is just about at 0. Take a look. See the curds? At this point, the curds are really, really soft. So they almost kind of like dissolve when you eat them, which is why we're going to strain them because I want them to firm up. So I'm going to strain. I have this is actually a skimmer. You can use a big slotted spoon. So I'm kind of cutting through the curd and lifting them out. So I have a strainer lined with cheesecloth. I want to be super gentle because I don't want to break up the curds too much. I just like leaving the curds in big pieces, so I'm just not like agitating it too much and breaking it up a lot because I want the curds to remain really separate from the whey. I would say that more than 50% by volume I now have in curds. And the whey is still pretty cloudy. I think partly that's just due to the agitation. Okay, so here is my cheese. I'm letting it just continue to drain, and so I'm collecting the whey. So I'm gonna let this drain overnight in the fridge, and I'm gonna pull more of that whey out, and it's gonna firm up and become kind of spreadable, very similar in texture to like a whole milk ricotta, but richer and like super delicious. We'll do like a 12 to 16 hours later, only because I'm not getting up that early in the morning. So we'll probably, yeah, 16 hours. Okay, so how many hours later is it? It is like about 16 hours later. So I grabbed the cheese from the fridge. So it's quite firm. It's sort of spreadable, but it has really like lost a lot of its moisture. So you can see the whey. It's about, I'd say, a half cup of whey. It's really delicious. It's really creamy. It's not particularly salty, and it's not super lemony either. In fact, there's not a whole lot of tang. So it's a super neutral canvas. And what I like about that is I can use it for sweet or savory. So I'm gonna make a kind of no-bake cheesecake. So there's no eggs in this cheesecake. Everything is literally just mixed together in the blender and smoothed into a baked crust, which I already prepared. I mean, okay, it's like, can I call it no-bake if you have to bake the crust? That's debatable. I still consider it no-bake because the filling goes in and it just chills. So this is the crust that I already baked and it's cool. So we're gonna use this. If you wanna see how to prepare it, You can go to the Dessert Person YouTube channel and go to the banana cream tart episode. I make it in a lot of different episodes, but that's exactly the same. And I just prepared it in a springform pan, but you could do it in a fluted tart pan, 9-inch. So I have all the ingredients. I have 8 ounces of cream cheese, a cup of heavy cream, a half cup of confectioner sugar. And then I'm gonna grate some lemon zest, add some vanilla extract and a little salt. And I'm gonna measure out 8 ounces of the farmer's cheese. You can see see that consistency. Okay, 8 ounces. So, couldn't be easier. I'm just combining everything in the blender. If you have a food processor, you can use that too. That doesn't matter. So cream cheese, pinch of salt, another pinch of salt, confectioner sugar. I'm using confectioner sugar because it basically dissolves instantly. Heavy cream. I think in the recipe it calls for extract. I have some paste here, 2 teaspoons. So it should be about a tablespoon of lemon zest. If you want it more lemony, you can add more zest and you can add, a little bit of lemon juice. Adding that liquid will not thin out the filling too much. I'm going to start it on low. And this is going to thicken quick. So basically you just want to go until you have a perfectly smooth texture and everything is really well mixed, which it is. Did not take long at all. So now I'm going to spread it into my crust. Getting stuff out of the blender jar is kind of a pain. All right, that's pretty good. Also, this crust, I should say, it is like my standard graham cracker crust, but instead of graham cracker, I used Biscoff. So it just gives it like a little bit more spice, which is really, really delicious with the filling. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth. I just want it to be even so that when I put the topping on, it doesn't like all shift to one side or something like that. Okay, this looks great. Tastes so good. As we've already covered, I really love dairy. I really love cheese. I really love cream. So this is gonna be delish. All right, that is the entire tart. I'm gonna stick it in the fridge because it just needs some time to set and firm up so I can slice it. And then I'll come back in like an hour or two and I'll show you how to make the cherry topping. So it's gonna have like that really classic New York cheesecake looking topping, but on like a much kind of lighter, less dense, creamier kind of, I don't know, do we call this a cheesecake? I think we do. Okay, into the fridge. Okay, so the cheesecake has been chilling for a couple hours. I'm ready to make my topping. You could do any topping you want. It's not super sweet, so you could even just like do a little bit of jam on top or, fruit preserves. You could do chocolate if you like chocolate. Whatever you want, but I like a fruit topping. I like to introduce something kind of bright and fresh. So I have 4 cups of frozen cherries that are thawed. This particular type of cherry mix is sweet and sour cherries, which is great. So if you can find a mix, it's actually more of a thing now. Like a couple of different brands make a mix of frozen cherries. That's great. If you can't find that, just use sweet. So I'm adding a 1/4 cup of granulated sugar. So the cherries were frozen and now they've thawed. So they've released a lot of their juices and I'm not really going to cook them a whole lot. I am actually just going to kind of warm them up so that the sugar dissolves and I want them to give off any of their remaining juices because then we're going to take the juices, separate those and thicken it with cornstarch. So they're like almost submerged in their own liquid, which is what you want. So I have my cherries and that 1/4 cup of sugar in here. Then I have 2 tablespoons of fresh lemon juice. We have the zest in the filling, so I'm using the juice for the topping. A tablespoon of cornstarch, that's going to thicken everything. And then I also just have actually that same strainer and glass measuring cup that I used to strain the farmer's cheese, I'm going to use to strain the cherries. So I'm going to go ahead and strain them. This mixture is warm, not even hot. I'm going to carefully transfer this so I can collect the juices. 4 cups of cherries sounds like a lot, but they really collapse as they give off their juices, so it doesn't end up being a huge volume. And now I'm going to pour the juices back into the saucepan. And I'm going to let the cherries continue to drain because I'm going to eventually like add that juice back in as well. And in the meantime, I'm going to start to heat this. And we're going to make something called a slurry. So that is where you combine the cornstarch with a little bit of liquid. And you stir it so that you get out any lumps, and then you stir that mixture back into the majority of your liquid. And that's because if you were to just dump cornstarch into a lot of liquid, you inevitably get lumps, and we just don't want any lumps. Use some of the lemon juice. And I'm stirring it with a fork. And so that's our cornstarch slurry. Go ahead and just add in the rest of the lemon juice. This is almost at a simmer, so now I'm going to whisk that cornstarch slurry into my cherry juices. And now I'm going to whisk this constantly, and it is going to come up to a boil, and you'll see that there will be a dramatic thickening. So this whole mixture has come to a boil. It is bubbling. Now I'm going to take it off the heat. Get that cat off that counter, because we don't do that in this house. So I have an ice bath here. You could just put this, careful Archie, you could just throw this in the fridge and let it chill down on its own, but I like stirring it over an ice bath because it happens really fast. So I just submerged the bottom of the saucepan in a bowl with some ice water and stirred it, and now you can see it has this like really nice thick consistency. So now I'm going to just fold back through those cherries, let them get coated. And again, the cherries still have some juice in them, so it will thin out the texture a little bit. But this to me has like a look of that sort of classic diner cheesecake topping that I really like. So now I'm ready to top everything. I'm going to grab the cheesecake from the fridge, get a little serving plate. We'll put it all together. All right, ready for me to pop it out? It looks great. The filling is nice and set. It's going to be sliceable. And I'm just going to kind of arrange my cherry topping over. And you don't have to cover every last bit. I like to sort of leave a little bit of negative space so you see some of the filling. And you also don't necessarily have to use all of it. That's so pretty. I have about a half cup of the cherry topping left, but I'm not going to put any more on because I think this looks good. And now we're ready just to cut and taste it. I love the way that it kind of like drips down the cut side. I know we're not anywhere near summer, but the kind of no-bake aspect of this makes it feel so right for summer. It's like super light, not at all heavy. It's not dense. So it really gives you something very different than like a, you know, really eggy, custardy New York style cheesecake. It's a good looking bite. I want to thank Julie and Rick at Freedom Hill Farm, where we got the great milk. And spring is around the corner. It's still cold out, but we're like almost at warm weather, so we're gonna bring you more original recipes. And I am also really interested to hear if there's any like recipe requests. Let us know what you're kind of craving or would like to see, and I'm happy to take a suggestion. I just wanna say, that whole excavator thing, that is not forgotten. That's still an ongoing project. I know we're being a little bit secretive about it. It's not that secretive. But now that the weather, we're like looking toward warmer weather, we're gonna pick that project back up. So lots of exciting things to happen on like the homestead. See you soon.